Welcome to Queer New Worlds, the podcast where we explore sci-fi through queer eyes and boldly go where no gay has gone before. I'm JJ, your host, your non-binary navigator and lifelong sci-fi fan who always felt a little bit alien. Each week I'll beam up a new theme of queerness in sci-fi, from campy villains to chosen families among the stars, and I'll rank a few pop culture icons on the camp-o-meter just to keep things fabulously scientific. So if you want some camp with your cryosleep and some quantum with your queer, this is the show for you. And let's be honest, sci-fi's already pretty camp and pretty queer. But it's not just about me, you're a crucial part of this. You can get involved by dropping a comment below or sending an email to queernewworldspod@gmail.com with your ideas and your questions. You can connect with us on socials at Queer New Worlds on Blue Sky, Instagram and TikTok, or you can visit our website queernewworlds.com. There'll be a new episode of the pod available on Spotify and YouTube every Friday. In today's episode, we'll be talking about camp in space. We'll explore the glam, the glitter, and the absurdity of sci-fi, looking at the camp aesthetics in Flash Gordon, Thunderbirds, Doctor Who, and Guardians of the Galaxy. But before we begin, how do we define camp? The Merriam-Webster Dictionary defines camp as something so outrageously artificial, affected, inappropriate, or out of date as to be considered amusing, a style or mode of personal or creative expression that is absurdly exaggerated, often fusing elements of high and popular culture, or exaggerated, effeminate mannerisms, as of speech or gesture. Although it's not certain where it originated, early references to the word camp were being used in this way dating back to the 1870s. The National Archives, in its article The Queer Victorian Origins of the Word Camp, references a scandalous court case from 1871 in which two people assigned male at birth regularly presented as women on stage, as Fanny Park and Stella Bolton. They were arrested for outraging public decency by dressing in lavish dresses and outfits outside of the accepted gender norms for the time. Letters from the time also used the word drag to refer to wearing clothes associated with a different gender, often in an exaggerated form. The article notes that camp challenges social norms and hierarchies by intentionally being different and bold, but being different was not always a safe or encouraged thing to be. Fortunately, Stella and Fanny ultimately avoided being charged due to their links with the theatre and performance providing a defence for their flamboyant way of dressing, but others were not so fortunate, and many concealed their true identity to stay safe. Both camp and drag have historically had a close link with theatrical performance, particularly comedy. Gender swapping and gender bending being routinely exaggerated for humour, especially when included in performance for a more cisgender and heterosexual audience. Men dressed as women appeared in theatre as early as Shakespeare, often hammed up for the audience to provide additional comedy. This originally stemmed from the fact that women were not permitted to be actors. However, Shakespeare intentionally included comedic and dramatic elements in his female roles to highlight this interplay of gender. He created several female characters who dress as men to gain more freedom and expression. For example, Viola in Twelfth Night, who dresses as her twin brother in order to get a job with the Duke, as she cannot work for the Countess. She ends up falling in love with the Duke, who, in turn, recruits her, as a boy, to woo the Countess on his behalf. There's a further layer of comedy here, man as woman as man, as well as being able to subtly comment on the performative usage of men dressing as women. Other characters embody exaggerated traits of femininity for comedic effect. For example, in The Merry Wives of Windsor, the male character Falstaff dresses as a woman named the Fat Woman of Brentford in order to escape from Master Ford. In her 1964 essay, Notes on Camp, Susan Sontag describes the essence of camp as its love of the unnatural, of artifice and exaggeration. So that's how we define camp. And now turning to camp in space, our theme for this episode, there are several elements for us to consider in relation to the presentation of artifice. First, we have the obvious aesthetics, bold and colourful costumes, makeup and set designs, but also unusual or exaggerated character designs, expressive camera work, and over-the-top or subtly self-aware visual performance, including body language and expression. Next, we have the sound of camp, theatrical or exaggerated music, sound effects, and the vocal performance of the characters. There's the genre and structuring of the narrative, often melodramatic, subverting or exaggerating elements of the way the genre is typically portrayed, and utilising extreme stereotypes for both heroes and villains. Writing choices can be camp too, making use of eloquent phrases, long monologues, wordplay, innuendo, and sass. Though camp is often silly, it takes its silliness very seriously. It's an integral part of the genre, having fun as well as poking fun. It reclaims exaggeration and theatrics with love and affection, embracing and celebrating it. Camp is often associated with queerness due to its subversion of gender and its tendency to the dramatic. For me personally, as a queer person, I was drawn to the freedom of expression and joy, the celebration of the silly, and the often colourful and surreal presentations in camp media. Reflecting on my early experiences of camp as a young person, I think I also resonated with the rejection of fixed identity and its playfulness. It's inherently joyful and without shame, and these are attractive qualities to anyone, especially queer people growing up in a world lacking many positive role models. So we've talked about what camp is and why it exists, so let's dive into some examples in sci-fi and explore why this genre is so ripe for the camping. Flash Gordon is probably one of the most recognisable examples of camp in sci-fi, with its over-the-top, bold costumes, sets and acting choices.
Gordon's alive!
Emperor Ming the Merciless is presented as the ultimate villain, and his distinctive look is immediately recognisable as performative, with his rich red and gold lame costume, high collar, manicured facial hair and bejewelled fingers. There's definitely a racist undertone here though, in both the movie and the original comic, with Ming's name, his appearance referencing Asian stereotypes of the time, and therefore a depiction of yellow peril, a Western perception of threat from the alien other in the East, primarily China. There was an effort to tone this down in the movie. Ming is presented as a white man with arched eyebrows and a wacky goatee, rather than having the yellow skin and Asian features prominent in the more sinister racist presentation in the comic. Ming's character is shown to experience extremes of emotion, from his bloodlust to his infatuation with the white female main character Dale. Plenty of other examples of camp exist in Flash Gordon too. We have the homoeroticism of Flash. He kind of reminds me of Rocky in the Rocky Horror Picture Show in this scene. And of course the similarly over-the-top and theatrical costuming and performances of characters such as Prince Baron, Princess Aura, and, who can forget, Brian Blessed's thespian turn as Prince Vultan of the Winged Hawkmen.
Let the combat begin! Die! Impetuous boy! Oh, well, who wants to live forever?
As well as aesthetics, the sound of Flash Gordon is high camp, featuring a soundtrack by glam rock band Queen, including the title track Flash. Queen itself being named after literal royalty, as well as a nod to queer history, with the word Queen referring to homosexual males. Lead singer of Queen, Freddie Mercury, was, of course, a gay or bisexual man. The Fifth Element is another great example of a high-camp sci-fi movie. Legendary fashion designer Jean-Paul Gaultier of Madonna cone bra fame created the costumes. For the movie, he incorporated corsetry, gender-bending silhouettes, and a variety of fabrics and materials to create hyper-stylized appearance. He designed over 1,000 different costumes for both main cast and extras, ensuring that every scene was beautiful and flamboyant, as well as offering a vision of a futuristic world. Lilu's orange rubber mankini over her textured satiny top and shiny gold pants gives disco meets punk construction worker, the bright colours giving her a distinctive appearance even in this ostentatious and vivid world. And Bruce Willis's character subverts the gendered expectation of a masculine male with his tight-fitting orange cutout tank top, echoing Lilu's initial bandage costume. Gender bending occurs too, with the character of Ruby Rod presented as a womanizer, yet exhibiting many stereotypes of queerness with his effeminate and theatrical performance, exotic costuming, and tendency to emotional reactions. He's easily annoyed and looks down at those around him. Originally, the director wanted famous musician Prince to play Ruby Rod, but scheduling issues meant that ultimately comedian Chris Tucker was given the role. And honestly, I think Prince would have played it just as campily. Costumes of characters in uniform were also heavily stylised, the air flight attendants looking as if they could run down a fashion runway, and the McDonald's servers resplendent in red corset, red wig, and the iconic logo on their heads. Extravagant costumes and lavish sets are also seen in TV. The original Jerry Anderson 1960s TV show Thunderbirds, whilst not intended to be camp, featured iconic looks for its cast of puppets, from the angular blue for the Tracy crew and the Barbie pink fashions of Lady Penelope, extending even to her Rolls Royce. Being puppets, the characters have an amusing and jarring body language and performance style, slightly robotic and wobbly, which adds to the overall whimsy of the show. Its glamorous locations and brass band meets orchestral soundtrack are more fitting to Hollywood blockbusters than a TV show for kids and adults. And compared to the stilted and wooden appearance of the puppets, feels pretty over the top. Anderson was insistent the show should be taken seriously and would probably be offended by my reading of it as camp, but there is no denying the spectacle and theatricality of the show, as well as its James Bond-esque missions. I'd also argue Doctor Who is pretty camp, especially the theatrical performance of the Fourth Doctor, played by the iconic Tom Baker, known for his wild hair, wild scarf, and wild behaviour.
Come along, Doctor. You're supposed to be in the sick bay.
Don't you mean the infirmary?
No, I do not mean the infirmary. I mean the sick bay. You're not fit yet.
Not fit. I'm the doctor.
No, Doctor. I'm the doctor, and I say that you're not fit.
You may be a doctor, but I'm the doctor. Would you like a chili, baby?
In more recent incarnations, the Doctor has been played by a woman, Jodie Whittaker, subverting the gender expectations of all previous versions, as well as a queer black man, Ncuti Gatwa. Its villains are frequently camp too, with the Daleks sporting all manner of strange appendages, including, frequently, household plungers, and the Cybermen in their highly stylised metal suits, both of which presented as extremely dangerous and exaggerated so far as to be absurd and comical than truly threatening. Its creators did not intend for Doctor Who to be read as camp, though it has always attracted a large queer audience, appreciative of the absurdity and escapism. In recent years, queerness has been more deliberately introduced into the show in both the makeup of the cast and crew and in its storylines, with the Doctor openly expressing attraction to more than one gender, and in 2023 introducing a transgender character also played by a transgender actress. Modern media is starting to embrace more queerness. The Guardians of the Galaxy is a particularly good example, and yes, I know some people are going to debate if this truly counts as sci-fi because it's really part of the superhero genre and contains references to fantasy, but I'd argue it's soft sci-fi, focusing on aliens and technology, albeit in a silly and absurd way. Like many other examples, it has a bright and colourful aesthetic, extravagant costumes, and sets that scream queer. It's also got a penchant for dramatising things so much that they quickly become absurd. The music is pretty camp too, often unironically referencing classic 70s and 80s disco and pop hits. Whilst it takes the plot seriously, it doesn't take itself too seriously. Camp is present in sci-fi video games too, though frequently more overtly found in fantasy games instead. Titles such as Bayonetta, Overkill, and God of War. Examples of sci-fi related games with camp elements tend towards the extremeness of violence, body horror, or gore, including games such as Resident Evil, which, whilst a more serious horror survival kind of game, is so extremely violent and graphic that it is comedic. Other examples include Alien Isolation from 2014 and the indie game Species Unknown, released just a few weeks ago. There's also plenty of aesthetic campness in sci-fi games, from the cyberpunk retrofuturism of System Shock from 1994 and the neo-futurism of the Mass Effect series. Hyperstylization helps the audience to suspend belief and to accept strangeness that would otherwise be very out of place. It serves to highlight and exaggerate examples of otherness, be that alien creatures, gender bending, or extreme violence and horror. And these are inherently queer-coded characteristics. Wrapping up then, camp in space has been a thread in sci-fi for decades, and camp itself can trace its history back centuries. As a society, we'll always enjoy and celebrate the absurdity and freedom of expression that campness gives us, even when presented in a more serious and unintentionally queer form. And it gives non-queer audiences a way to relax and enjoy without feeling too alienated. By deliberately highlighting strangers to a comedic extreme, it makes it easier to accept. So now it's time for our first regular segment, The Queel, where we spin a wheel of the top 100 sci-fi movies as ranked by Time Out magazine, and then do an in-depth analysis to see just how queer these movies are. As well as a way to decode the subtext in popular entertainment, it's also an excuse for me to just watch more sci-fi. Last week, The Queel selected Contact, so this week I'm asking, how queer is the movie Contact from 1997? Let's begin with a summary of the basic plot, and, as always, spoilers ahead if you haven't watched this movie yet. Jodie Foster plays scientist Ellie Arroway, who spends her days listening to the skies for evidence of extraterrestrial life. Ellie has some daddy issues. Her father passed away when she was young, and she grew up to honour him with her focus on radio transmissions. One day, she discovers an unusual signal which appears to contain a message in the form of numbers. Decoding the message leads Ellie to discover schematics for creating a machine, which she and other scientists presume is a vessel to transport a human passenger into space. Ellie is eventually selected to travel in the vessel, and seems to travel vast distances across space, witnessing many amazing sights. Eventually, she ends up on a dreamlike beach, which reminds reminds her of one from her childhood. Her dead father walks towards her and reveals himself to be an alien inhabiting this form to communicate with her and explaining that the aliens wanted to show humans the wider universe. When Ellie wakes up, she finds the machine fell straight through the hole it was in and that no time has passed, despite it feeling to her like many hours. She is changed by the experience, and although nobody can prove it, Ellie is convinced it was real. It is then later revealed at the White House that Ellie's recording device did indeed record many hours of static, which suggests that she had gone for a long time, even if it only seemed a brief second on Earth. The themes here of a journey of discovery, finding yourself and meaning, and of speaking your truth even when nobody is prepared to listen, are all relatable experiences of queerness. Ellie is herself a queer-coded character with her androgynous appearance, her struggles to fit in and form relationships with others, her failure to form a lasting romantic attachment to men, and her intense personality. Her narrative arc is one of loneliness and found family. She's a lonely child who decides to pursue a niche interest, still alone as an adult, yet discovering connection and wonderment with an alien race, and this ultimately enables her to form a meaningful relationship with a man in her life. The aliens literally tell her she is not alone, and they validate her overwhelming emotional feelings. They share her perspective on the universe, one which no other human has experienced. The cinematography is queer-coded too, heavily stylised and often showing extremes such as the tiny Ellie next to the enormous satellite dish. The beach scene is dreamlike and highly saturated in colour, vibrant and twinkling, and a safe place for her to explore her feelings with the aliens. There's also one of the most famous shots in cinema, with a young Ellie running up the stairs and opening a cupboard door, only for it to be revealed it was a mirror the whole time. The movie is a spectacle, from the wormholes to the scale of the machinery and the humans, and the music too heightens the emotional impact, with lush strings and sweeping melodies. It's almost melodramatic. I mentioned last week that Contact feels to me a similar movie to Interstellar, and they do share some similar elements of exploration of feelings, spectacular cinematography, and an extremely emotional soundtrack. Both movies also share a producer, Linda Obst, as well as a lead actor in Matthew McConaughey, but I digress. This is an analysis of Contact, and we will come back to Interstellar another time. Another element of queer coding in Contact is the positioning of the various corporations and agencies as hostile and unaccepting. The trial at the end of the movie, where Ellie struggles to get her point across, resonates deeply with the queer experience of institutional oppression. She is forced to justify herself, asked for proof of her experience when she has no easy way to explain, gaslit into thinking it might not be real, and treated demeaningly, the machine being dismissed as a hoax. As a queer person watching this movie, the insistence on having to prove yourself, of facing hostility when expressing yourself, and of speaking your truth only to be shut down when others disagree with you is quite relatable. So yes, it's a very queer-coded movie, even if it's intended to be a very serious sci-fi movie. From the over-the-top music, visuals, performances, and the representations of morality, to its narrative focus on identity, belonging, longing, and being the outsider. Time Out magazine ranked Contact 47th in its list, describing it as suffering from bouts of sentimentality and a tendency to play things a little safe, but it benefits from a handful of glorious visual moments unlike anything else in sci-fi, including a special effects bonanza. And whilst I agree with this description, my personal view is that 47th is pretty harsh, because this puts it behind other movies in the list such as Total Recall, Gattaca, Planet of the Apes and Solaris, none of which I would personally consider to be better movies. So for me, I think it hovers somewhere around 30th place. It's definitely not top of the list, but it is better than a lot of other movies out there. And that's not because I think it's a higher quality movie. Some of those are objectively better for their set design, their narrative and their writing, but for me, Contact was a bold movie for its time, with its exploration of otherness and identity, and it's one of the very few movies I've seen that really captures the tremendous awe of the vastness of space. And with that, let's spin the Queel to select the next movie for me to analyse through queer eyes. So we're down to 98 movies now from the original 100, and there are still plenty on here I haven't seen yet. So for next week, what's the Queel going to choose? The Queel has chosen... Ooh, Primer from 2004. So that's a movie I haven't actually seen before, so that's great, and actually exactly what I wanted from this segment. It was ranked at number 37 on the list by Time Out, so apparently better than Contact by some margin. So let's check out the details of this movie. So, made in 2004, as I said, and directed by Shane Carruth. Sorry if I'm not saying that right, by the way. and with a cast of just 3 people, including the director himself, and apparently shot on a budget of just $7,000. So yeah, wow, definitely an indie movie. So Time Out describes this movie as gradually picking its way towards a state somewhere between paranoid anxiety and head-spinning dizziness. I'm definitely getting the vibe that this is quite an experimental movie and potentially exploring some psychological elements. But yeah, I really don't know anything about this film, even the plot really, so let's take a look on Wikipedia to get more of an idea of what to expect. So here we go. Primer is a 2004 American independent science fiction film written, directed, produced, edited and scored by Shane Carruth in his feature debut. Oh wow, so busy guy. The film stars Carruth and David Sullivan and depicts the events surrounding the accidental discovery of time travel. Primer is noted for its extremely low-budget experimental plot structure, philosophical implications, and complex technical dialogue, which Carruth, a college graduate with a degree in maths and a former engineer, chose not to simplify for the sake of the audience. The film won the Grand Jury Prize Dramatic at the 2004 Sundance Film Festival before securing a limited release in the US and has since gained a cult following. I'm getting the vibe here this is quite an interesting movie. It sounds like it's got some really strong kind of narrative elements, and specifically around the technical stuff, the maths, proper sci-fi really. But also the fact that it's won a prize, it was shot on a tiny budget, as I said, and yet has still managed to become this kind of cult movie. It sounds really cool, so I'm looking forward to watching it. Like I say, I've never seen this before, I don't really know anything about it, and I'll be reviewing this in next week's episode and giving a queer interpretation of elements that I can see in this movie. There may be none, I don't know. We'll wait and see until we've seen it. Once again, it's time for us to return to the Camp-O-Meter, where I take a light-hearted look at popular sci-fi characters and judge their queerness on a scale of my own design, ranging from in the closet to baby gay, partial slay, fabulous darling, up to yes queen, and finally the ultimate queer ranking, iconic diva. This week, we've got to include Ellie from Contact as a queer icon, and as the theme of this episode is camp aesthetics, I've also selected Prince Vultan from Flash Gordon and Lady Penelope from Thunderbirds. So first up then, Ellie. She's definitely a queer-coded character, from her androgynous style to her struggle to fit in and her voyage of self-discovery, though her queerness is more subtle than many other characters, and so for that reason, I think she just tips into fabulous darling. She's more than a partial slay, but she's not quite Yas Queen or iconic diva territory, so I'm going to put her somewhere in the middle. Next we have Prince Vultan from Flash Gordon, and honestly, I don't think you could pick out a more camp character from this movie if you tried. He is so over the top in every way, from his booming voice to his power stance and his ridiculous costume. Yet, he's proudly himself, and he's accepted by those around him. It's an iconic character and an even more iconic performance. His heightened and rugged masculinity, along with his loud and proud character, matches many of the qualities of the bear type in gay subculture. Like, he simultaneously looks as if he could flatten any rugby player, but he'd also give you a really nice hug. So, for those reasons, I think we can safely say Prince Vultan is an iconic diva, and I'll be putting him straight to the top of the list. But in that category, we've also got Frankenfurter from the Rocky Horror Picture Show and Ash from Alien, so I need to decide where to put Prince Vultan. I definitely think he's above Ash, but he's probably in a similar camp to Frank, no pun intended, so I think he belongs right alongside just there. And last but not least, we have Lady Penelope from Thunderbirds. She's a blonde bombshell with some iconic fashion, but to me, she's also exceptionally queer as the rich single lady driving around in her fancy Rolls Royce with a stiff upper lip British butler come chauffeur, Parker. She is absolutely iconic, even if not explicitly queer herself. And though high femme represents female power in a show and at a time when femininity was not synonymous with power. So for those reasons, I think she makes it a fabulous darling for me. I'll put her just behind Ellie from Contact, who I think is definitely more queer-coded. So there you go, that's it. Those are my Camp-O-Meter judgments for this episode. What do you think? Do you agree or disagree? And which other campy characters would you put on the Camp-O-Meter? Drop me a comment below, contact us on socials at Queer New Worlds on Blue Sky, Instagram and TikTok, or send an email to queernewworldspod@gmail.com. And now it's time for your listener responses in the segment we call Incoming Transmission. As we've been talking about camp in this episode, last week I was asking you who are your favourite campy characters in sci-fi, and here are a few of them. First up we have listener Dave from Kentucky who said Robbie the robot from Forbidden Planet with his iconic waddle and a dry sense of humour. An anonymous listener wrote in to express their admiration for General Carla from Flash Gordon, in particular her shiny black and gold fashion choices and the fact she carried around a cat o' nine tails. Beautiful, yet terrifying. And finally, listener Ruth from Cardiff said her favourite campy character was Jack Harkness from Torchwood. He's such a flirt, she said. So thank you for those responses, and if you want to get in touch, you can do so. In next week's episode, we'll be exploring the theme of alternate universes and alternate identities, looking at everything from Stranger Things to Star Trek's Mirror Universe, examining how the use of alternate universes permits and even encourages the exploration of otherness. So join me next week for this, and of course, my queer interpretation of Primer. And I want to know, if you travelled to an alternate universe and met yourself, what would the alternate version of you be like? Would they be more dramatic or more chill, more adventurous or chaotic, or more smart and sensible? Would they be super glam or devastatingly evil? I'll share a few of these in next week's episode. If you have ideas or suggestions or would like to get involved with the podcast, you can send us an email with your thoughts to queernewworldspod@gmail.com, drop us a comment below, or reach out to us on socials at queernewworlds on Blue Sky, Instagram and TikTok. You can also visit our website, queernewworlds.com. If you've enjoyed this podcast, don't forget to like and subscribe. There's a new episode on YouTube and Spotify every Friday. Until next time, live long and fabulous.